October 21st, 1927, Arkham, Massachusetts. The eerie events unfolding across the globe have led me to a bone-chilling discovery. The ancient and malevolent entity known as Atlach-Nacha is awakening. Deep within the caverns beneath Mount Vermithidreth, in the forgotten Arctic kingdom of Hyperborea, this monstrous spider god spins a great web, bridging the many caverns of the underworld together. However, my research has also uncovered a hopeful truth. There is a select band of investigators scattered across the globe who have glimpsed into the heart of this looming terror. They are our only hope to prevent Atlach-Nacha from escaping its subterranean lair, a calamity that would spell the end of our world as we know it. As the group of four begin their investigation, I must find a way to warn the unsuspecting world of this impending disaster, for if we fail, all will be lost.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Keith, and tonight we're taking a thrilling journey back to the 1920s as we dive into the Lovecraftian horror classic Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games. In this video series, 4 random investigators will face off against an ancient old one as it stirs from its slumber. Brace yourselves for an epic battle against the unknown. We'll begin by drawing a prelude card, and the card is revealed to be Unwilling Sacrifice. You didn't see the faces of the men who took you in the black of night, but you could see the face of another who shares your fate. Bound and gagged, the other victim lies helpless on the stone altar beside you. A black-robed figure prepares to drive a jeweled dagger into the victim's heart. With the cultist distracted, you think you could escape. But could you really do so in good conscience? Nay. As the blade comes down, adrenaline surges through your body, and you slip from your restraints. You throw yourself between the robed assailant and his victim. The blade sinks deep into your flesh, missing your heart by mere inches. You wench the dagger free from your wounded shoulder, and after subduing the cultist, you free your grateful companion. Those who did this to you will pay in kind. That much is certain. And it says, after resolving setup, each investigator may spend 2 health to gain 1 character unique asset. All right. Now we're going to randomly select our investigators. Our starting investigators will be Michael McGlenn, the gangster. He's going to begin the game with 8 health and 4 sanity. He has very strong strength, rating of 4 with 3 willpower. So that's pretty good. That'll make him a good fighter. He's going to begin the game with a Tommy gun, which is going to give him +4 to strength during combat encounters. And he has some decent influence as well. He has an influence of 3. Michael McGlenn is going to begin the game in London, England. Then we have Lily Chen, the martial artist. She's more of a balanced figure. She has 6 health and 6 sanity. Once again, she has an excellent strength of 4 and a willpower of 3. She's going to begin the game with a protective amulet, and that's going to give her +1 to willpower in combat encounters. And she'll begin with a lucky rabbit's foot. It's a trinket, and it says once per round, she can reroll 1 die when resolving any test, so that's great. Lily Chen is going to begin the game in Shanghai, China. Then we have Wendy Adams, the urchin. She has a health of 5 with 7 sanity. She has a very strong observation of 4. That could come in pretty handy. She's going to begin the game with a clue and a talent condition, elusive. During the encounter phase, she can test observation. If she passes, she can choose an encounter as if there are no monsters in her space, and then the card will be flipped. So that's an interesting character. Wendy Adams is going to begin the game in Central Russia. in space 16. And finally, we have Hank Sampson. He is the farmhand. And once again, he has a very powerful health of 8, but a low sanity of 4. Strength level of 4 and a willpower of 3 with 3 observation. So he's more of a combat-orientated investigator. He's going to begin the game with a sledgehammer, which gives him +1 to strength, and he'll gain +2 strength during a combat encounter. Hank Sampson is going to begin the game in Dallas, Texas, space 6. And now we'll select our Ancient One, and that's revealed to be Atlach-Nacha, the Dreamweaver. All right, Atlach-Nacha begins with a doom track of 9, so that's relatively low. It doesn't give us a lot of time to deal with this Ancient One. As a part of the setup, we're going to set aside a Lang Spider, and the lead investigator is going to gain a spell. So let's see what that is. Our lead investigator is Michael McGlenn, and he's going to begin with a summoning spell. It's a ritual. As an action, he can test lore +2. If he passes, he can move one monster of his choice with a toughness equal to or less than the result to his space. And then he'll flip the card. All right. Now, in order to defeat Atlach-Nacha, we need to solve 3 mysteries. And it does have a reckoning effect. It's going to spawn a gate during reckoning effects unless the group discards a total number of clues and or spells equal to half the number of investigators. So that'll be 2. And now we're going to set up our Mythos deck. And for this game, I'm going to be removing the hard difficulty blue Mythos cards. In my last playthrough, I was ravaged by one of those difficult ones, and that pretty much kind of almost destroys the game. If you end up getting one of those early in the game, it gets to be insurmountable. So we're going to remove those. We'll leave all of the other cards in the draw piles, and we'll build our Mythos deck according to Atlach-Nacha's Mythos deck setup. Now we'll take a look at the cards that'll be starting in the reserve. We have a Book of Spells. That's a tome. Has a value of 3. We've got a lantern, value of 1. Fishing net, value of 2. And a 38 revolver, value of 1. So nothing outstanding in there, but nothing terrible either. Our initial gate is going to be in Istanbul, and that's going to be defended by a Star Vampire. Examining the back of the Star Vampire token, it says when the monster is spawned, advance the omen by 1 unless the investigators as a group spend 2 clues. Well, we're not going to do that because we don't have any clues other than 1 for Wendy Adams. So the omen track is going to advance. That'll move from the starting position at the green comet, and it will move clockwise to the blue star pattern. And now we have to decide if we're going to take advantage of this unwilling sacrifice prelude card. It says after resolving setup, each investigator may spend 2 health to gain 1 character unique asset. So I think we're going to do that with our 2 stronger characters. That'll be Michael McGlenn and Hank Sampson. They both have health of 8, so we can afford to do it with them, and I think we'll do that. Michael's going to spend 2 health, and he'll get to draw an ally character. And he gains Esteban Harrow. When you gain this card from the deck, improve observation. Okay, so we're going to get an improvement to observation for Michael McGlenn. So we'll give him +1 to observation. That's great. Moves us up to 2. Then it says once per round during the action phase, you may trade possessions with each other investigator on your space. So that's pretty good. That's really going to facilitate us exchanging items. Normally during an action phase, you have to spend an action to do a trade action. So that'll save us from having to spend that. That's great. And I think Hank Sampson will do the same. He has a health of 8, so we'll spend 2 of those, and we'll draw And character, unique asset. This time he gets Etan Laurent. You may add 1 success to your test results when resolving an influence test during an acquire assets action. Once per round during the action phase, you may discard 1 card from the reserve. Okay, that's great. Now we're going to reveal our first mystery. This one is entitled Shroud of the Spider Mother. And it reads, Atlach-Nacha lurks far below the slopes of Vormithadreth. There she weaves her silken shroud, stitching the dreams of the ancient ones into the folds of reality, heralding the end times of man. After the investigator resolves a research encounter, he may spend 1 clue he gained from that encounter to place that clue on this card. At the end of the Mythos phase, if there are clues on this card equal to the number of investigators, solve the mystery. Okay, so we're going to need 4 clues on there. And now let's do a little strategy session and see how we're going to approach defeating Atlach-Nacha. Well, the biggest concern with this ancient old one is definitely its starting doom track. It starts at 9. So we can't allow this doom track to move too quickly. So that means closing gates, definitely. Now their special cultist rules are when the monster is spawned, we move it to the nearest space that does not contain a gate or a monster. So these monsters are going to be separated from, or the cultist I should say, will be separated from the gates. They're going to be, that'll require a little bit more care in trying to deal with these things. Now Michael McGlenn picked up that summoning spell, which is going to be pretty useful. He can make a lore test, and if he's successful, he's able to draw that monster to his space, which could be pretty useful for us. He has a very high combat and willpower, and then with his Tommy gun, give us a good chance on defeating these creatures. So I think that star vampire that first appeared would be probably wise for us to try to draw him to London. Instead of moving to it, we'll draw the creature to us. And I think that might be a good strategy for Michael McGlenn. Now Lily Chen has a pretty interesting set of active and passive abilities. She can spend any number of health or sanity to recover an equal number of health or sanity. So that's going to allow us to kind of balance our health and sanity. If one gets too low, we can spend some of the other to bring that up, and that should be pretty useful. Her passive ability is when she improves a skill, she can immediately improve that skill again, which is pretty good. So we're going to try to get her into those locations that allow improving of skills. That will be definitely useful for her. She starts the game in Shanghai, which allows the primary ability of that space is to improve lore, which would be good. Wendy Adams is probably going to be our best spellcaster. She starts the game with 3 lore, so it would be kind of beneficial for us to for her to try to get some magic, some spells. That would be good for her. She has a very interesting passive ability. It says once per round, if you would gain a non-deal condition or an impairment token, you may choose to not gain that condition or impairment token. So it makes her immune to those things, which is pretty good. She also has that elusive ability, and that allows her to move into a space with a monster, and she can, if she can pass a observation test, she can choose an encounter as if there's no monster in the space. So that would allow her to avoid having to deal with combats with those monsters. That's pretty valuable. Looking at Hank Sampson, he has some very interesting active and passive abilities. First one is action. He can test strength, and if he passes, he can discard a monster on a space with a toughness less than or equal to the test result. That would be pretty good. That would allow us to easily clean up some of the smaller value toughness monsters on the board. He also has a special ability. He does not have to resolve a will test during a combat encounter unless he loses health from the strength test. So that's pretty interesting. So I think the strategy for this game is to obviously pursue whatever we have to solve the mysteries, but in the same token, we need to monitor that doom track. We have to keep the gates off the board so that the doom track will not advance. It'll be very important for us. So we're going to begin the game with our lead investigator, and that's Michael McGlenn. He is currently in London. Okay, for his first action, he's going to do a focus action. So he's going to gain a focus token. I think for his second action, he's going to gather resources. So we'll have him gain a resource token. And that's going to be his 2 actions. We'll move on to Lily Chen. She's in Shanghai. I think Lily's first action will be to focus. We'll give her a focus token. And I think her second action will be to gain resources, and we'll give her a resource token. That'll be her 2 actions. I like to build up my characters with those tokens if possible. Rerolls are extremely important in this game. That'll finish her up, and we'll move on to Wendy Adams. Wendy Adams is in central Russia, and I think what we'll do with her, she has that elusive ability, which allows her during an encounter phase, she can make an observation test. If she's able to pass it, she can encounter the space as though there's no monster there. So I think we're going to move her. First action will be a move action, and we'll move her to Istanbul. And then she can maybe try to close that gate if she's able to evade that star vampire. Her second action is going to be a focus action. We'll give her a focus token. That'll bring her action phase to a close. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. He's in Dallas, Texas. I think Hank is going to begin with a focus action. We'll give him a focus token. Then he's going to do a move action. He'll take the rail line to the northeast and move to Arkham. And that's going to be his 2 actions. Now we'll move on to our encounters phase, and we'll begin with Michael McGlenn. That's our lead investigator. He's in London. So we're going to take a location encounter in London. The encounter in London reads, at the lecture of a noted archaeologist, he reveals startling information. Spawn 2 clues. All right, that is great. Let's spawn 2 clues. First clue is going to appear in Tokyo. Next one is in Shanghai. All right. And we'll continue reading. It says, during the presentation, a stranger tries to sneak a scarab into your pocket. Test observation. All right. All right, Michael McGlenn currently has an observation level of 2, so he'll be rolling 2 dice for the test. We'll see if he can pass this. Okay, here is the roll. And he has a 4 and a 2. There's no success there. So we can use the focus token that he has, and I think we might try that. So McGlenn is going to spend his focus token that will allow us a re-roll on 1 die. So we'll try it. Here's the roll. And he has a 2 that's a failure, so we'll continue reading. It says, it is inscribed with the words, cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence. If you fail, gain an internal injury condition. Okay, that's not good. So McGlenn is going to gain an internal injury condition. It says when you perform a rest action, you may roll 1 die. On a 5 or 6, discard the card. During reckoning effects, he's going to have to test strength, and if he fails, he'll have to flip the card. Okay, that's going to bring his encounter phase to a close. We'll move on to Lily Chen. She is in Shanghai. All right, Lily is going to attempt a token encounter, and she's going to do a research encounter to try to get that clue token. We can place that, if we're successful, towards our current mystery. So we'll draw a research card, and we're going to be consulting the city portion of the card. She's in Shanghai, and that reads, you spot a deadly spider crawling up a stranger's shoulder and attempt to swat it. Test observation -1. Well, unfortunately, Lily has an observation level of 2, so she's only going to be able to roll 1 die. Now, she has a lucky rabbit's foot that allows her to make a re-roll 1 die during a test. And she does have a focus token, so we'll try it. Okay, here is her observation test. She rolls a 2, so that's a failure. She's going to employ her lucky rabbit's foot, and that allows her to re-roll 1 die for a test. So we'll tip that card to show that we've used it during the round, and she'll make a reroll. Here is the reroll. And she rolls a 3. It looks like successes are hard to come by today. Well, we have the option of using our focus token. It only gives us a 1 in 3 chance. I think we'll save that and we will continue reading. It says, if you fail, the spider grows suddenly to a gargantuan size. A Lang spider monster ambushes you. Okay. All right, so she is ambushed by the Lang spider. Let's take a look at its statistics. And it says here, if you fail the will test, do not resolve the strength test, and you do not resolve any other encounter in the space during this round. Okay, so first thing is a will test, and it has a horror level of 2. All right, Lily has a willpower of 3, and she gains +1 willpower for her protective amulet. So she'll be rolling a total of 4 dice for the test. All right, let's roll 4 dice and see what happens. Okay, here's the roll. All right, she has 1 success, so that's going to reduce the horror down by 1. So she's going to take 1 sanity damage. 2 minus 1 is 1. That'll reduce her sanity level from 6 down to 5. All right, now she's got to do a strength test. It's strength minus 1 with a damage of 2. She has a strength level of 4, and that's all of the modifiers she's going to get. So she'll be rolling 3 dice for the test. And it has a toughness of 3, which is not good. Okay, here is the roll. And she's got 2 successes. All right. So that's going to absorb the damage that she would normally take, and that creature's going to take 2 wounds. So we'll place the 2 wounds down there on the Lang spider. Now this was an ambush, so I'm going to look that up to see what the specifications of an ambush are. And it says, after resolving a combat encounter, the monster is discarded, even if it is not defeated. All right, so that's what happens with that. And it does say, unlike a normal combat encounter, if the investigator is ambushed by a monster and he defeats that monster, he cannot resolve an additional encounter. So the wounds tokens on it are irrelevant. The token will be returned back to the display for Atlach-Nacha, and that ends her turn. So that wasn't the worst. We ended up losing 1 sanity in the process, and that was the extent of it. We'll move on now to Wendy Adams, and she is in Istanbul. Now, normally Wendy would have to combat the star vampire, but she has this special condition, a talent called elusive. It says, during the encounter phase, you may test observation. If you pass, you may choose an encounter as if there are no monsters on your space, and then flip the card. All right, Wendy has an observation of 4. So we'll have her make the roll and see what she gets. Okay, here is her observation roll with 4 dice. And she's got 2 successes, so that is not a problem. It says if you pass, you may choose an encounter as if there are no monsters in your space, and then flip the card. All right, well, in this case, she's going to attempt to close that gate, I think. We will do that. So we're going to do a close the gate encounter. And that's revealed to be the Plateau of Lang. It says something on the horizon attracts your attention. Before you can identify it, a blinding snowstorm picks up. Through the snow, you are no longer sure of the direction you're going. Resolve the pass effect to press forward, or resolve the fail effect to turn back. All right. Well, I guess she's going to press on. And it says, pushing through the storm, you see a mountain ahead of you and Lang disappearing behind you. You attempt to climb the steep slope. Test strength minus 1. Well, unfortunately, strength is not one of Wendy's fortes. She only has a strength of 2. So with that modifier, she'll be rolling 1 die for the test. She does have a clue token and a focus token, so we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get lucky here. Here's the roll. She rolls a 6, so we're successful. So we'll read on. It says, if you pass, you reach the top and realize you've climbed Mount Everest. Close this gate and improve wisdom, or will rather. Whether you pass or not, move to the Himalayas. All right, so we've closed the gate. That is great. And she's going to improve will, which is awesome. So we have closed the gate in Istanbul. That is closed. And that's important for us. We don't want to have gates open. So when the doom track advances, when the omen track advances, the doom track is going to be sliding down. So that's good. Part of the condition was that she has to appear in the Himalayas, and that's where she's at now. And now we have to flip the elusive card that Wendy used. She had 2 successes when she used that talent. So we'll see what the effects are on this. And it says elusive. Resolve the effect based on your test results. Well, we had 1+. Your fear of being caught has you in a constant state of heightened tension, and your physical well-being suffers because of it. Gain 1 injury condition unless you discard this card. Then flip the card. Well, I think she is going to discard the card. We don't want to take an injury for her, and so we'll discard that elusive talent. All right, Hank Sampson is in Arkham, and I think he'll do a Arkham encounter. All right, that encounter reads, you ask Gilman House hotel staff at Innsmouth for help. Test influence. Okay, Hank Sampson has an influence level of 2, so we're definitely not playing to our strengths here with these tests, but we'll try it. So he's going to do a influence test. His influence is 2. Here is the roll. He's got a success. He's got a 5, so we'll continue reading. And it says, if you pass, the clerk shows you the lost and found. Gain 1 random magical asset from the deck. Okay, that's great. And Samson acquires an enchanted dagger, item, magical weapon. Gain +2 strength during combat encounters. Okay, that's great. All right, that's going to conclude our encounters phase. We'll move on to the Mythos phase. All right, we draw our Mythos card, and it's entitled Played for a Fool. We'll begin with an Omen track advancement. Our Omen track will advance to the red circle. We have no red gates open, so there's no effect. Next up, we're going to resolve our reckonings, and we'll begin with monsters and then the ancient one. Okay, we have no monsters with reckoning effects on the board, but the ancient one, Atlach-Nacha, does have a reckoning effect. And that reads, spawn a gate unless the investigators as a group discard a total number of clues and or spells equal to half the investigators. Okay. Well, we would have to give up the clue from Wendy Adams and the spell from Michael McGlenn, so I don't think we want to do that, so we will just spawn the gate. And that gate is going to appear in Relay, that is space 3, and it's a blue gate. So the gate opens up in space 3, that's Relay, and a star spawn appears to guard the gate. Let's see what the strength of that is. Boy, it's a level 5 toughness. That's pretty tough, and it does have a reckoning effect that would kick in the next turn. We'll move on to possessions and conditions, and the only one we have is an internal injury by Michael McGlenn. We'll take a look at that. And during the reckoning phase, it says test strength. If you fail, flip the card. All right, McGlenn has a strength of 4, so we'll make the roll and see if he can pass this. And he's failed, so it says if failed, flip the card. Let's see what happens. It says excruciating pain. The pain rises to a crescendo, knocking you off your feet. When you finally regain consciousness, the floor is covered in blood. Lose 3 health, then discard the card. All right, well, at least we're through with the card. That's going to move McGlenn down to 3 health. Not good. And at least the card is discarded, so that's good. Next up, we have to spawn a gate. So let's see where this one's going to be. The gate is going to appear in Rome, Italy. And we discover it's defended by an avian thrall. I don't think I've seen that creature before. Let's take a look at this thing. It has the standard will test with a 2 horror, strength -1 with 2 damage, and it has a toughness of 3. And it says if you lose sanity from the will test, gain a corruption condition. And then during reckoning, move this monster to the nearest investigator. Then he encounters the monster. All right. So that's not so good. So those will be placed in Rome. So the gate in Rome and the avian thrall are placed in Rome. Now we'll read the event portion of the Mythos card. And that reads, in your quest for forbidden knowledge, you have let your enemies use your greatest strength against you. The dark forces knew how easily you could be blinded by your own pride. Played for a fool. Each investigator loses 2 sanity and impairs his highest skill unless he spends a clue. Oh no. Well, Michael McGlenn doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have any clue tokens, so we're going to have to lose 2 sanity and then impair our highest attribute. So that's going to be strength. So we've impaired his strength. He's down to a 3 now, and he's at 3 health and 2 sanity now. So not so good for Michael McGlenn. Lily Chen does not have any clues, so she's going to also have to lose 2 sanity, moving her down to 3. And she's also going to have to impair strength. That's her highest attribute. So we'll mark her with impaired strength. Wendy Adams does have a clue token, and I think she'll use that to prevent the loss of sanity and impairment. And once again, we have now Hank Sampson, and he has no clues, so we'll have to lower his sanity down to 2. And we'll have to impair strength once again. That's his highest ability. So we'll give him an impairment token. That was not a good card for us at all, folks. And that's going to complete our first round of the game. That was a tough one. We didn't make many good die rolls, and we got some kind of nasty cards on top of it. All right, we're ready to start the next round. And before we do have the option of moving our first player marker. Currently it's with Michael McGlenn in London, and I think I'll leave it with him for the time being. A few concerns on the board. We have 2 gates open. The Omen track will be moving to a blue star pattern. That means that the gate open in Rely is going to move the Doom track up. Not to mention, if there's a reckoning effect, this monster here is a star spawn, and on a die roll of 1 or 2 during a reckoning effect, that will also move up the Doom by 1. So we're going to have to try to deal with that. We'll begin with Michael McGlenn in London, and he's going to take his actions. Now McGlenn has this summoning spell, and that would be pretty useful for getting some of these remote monsters to his location where he can use his superior firepower, combat, and Tommy gun to destroy them. The problem is he has a pretty low lore value, so I'm thinking what I could do is if I can get the Book of Spells from the reserve, that's going to add +2 to his lore for spell effects. We have a better chance of being able to draw these monsters towards us. So I think I'm going to start out with McGlenn with a acquire assets, and we'll try that. All right, McGlenn has an influence of 3, so he'll be rolling 3 dice for the test. Let's see if we can get a success here. He has 2 successes. That is awesome. And I think what we're going to do is I'm going to spend one of his resource tokens, and that is going to get us a total of 3 successes. So we'll be able to purchase an item with a value of 3. And I think we're going to get that Book of Spells for him. I think I'm going to purchase this Book of Spells. It says when you gain this card from the deck or reserve, gain 2 spells, discard one of them, and then gain +2 lore when resolving spell effects. So that's going to be very useful. So we're going to gain 2 spells and we'll keep 1. All right, so the 2 spells are Flesh Ward and Healing Words. So we can keep one of those and discard the other. All right, the Flesh Ward is an incantation. It says once per round when an investigator would lose health, you may test lore. If you pass, prevent the investigator from losing up to 2 health, then flip the card. And we have Healing Words. That's also an incantation. When an investigator on your space performs a rest action, you may test lore. If you pass, that investigator recovers 1 additional health and 1 additional sanity, and then flip the card. All right, I think we're going to keep the Flesh Word spell. We'll keep that and we will discard Healing Words. And then we'll replace our item on the reserve, and that ends up being Vampiric Talisman with a cost of 2. It is a magical relic. And I think for McGlenn's second action, he's going to do a rest action. He's down to 3 health and 2 sanity. So we'll have him do a rest, and he'll be able to recover 1 of each of those, raising him up to 4 health and 3 sanity. That'll complete his actions. We'll move on to Lily Chen. Lily's in Shanghai. She has 1 focus and 1 resource token, and her health and sanity are at 6 and 3 for sanity. So I think Lily is going to do a rest action. That's going to allow her to heal up 1 sanity token. That'll move her up to 4, and then I think she's going to do another focus. That'll give her 2 focus tokens. Okay, we'll move on to Wendy Adams. Okay, Wendy is at the Himalayas, and she has 1 focus token, and she's full with health and sanity. So I think what we'll do is we'll have her do a move action. She'll move along the uncharted path from the Himalayas to Bombay, India. And I think for Wendy's second action, she's going to purchase a rail ticket. Wendy has a very high observation value, and I think that would be useful in closing gates. So I'm going to try to use that rail ticket to get her to Rome next turn, and maybe she can close that gate there. We'll see. We'll move on to Hank Sampson. He's currently in Arkham. I think Hank is going to begin by moving to London. It'll be a move action for him. He'll join Michael McGlenn in London. Hank is also down to 2 sanity, so I think I'll do a heal action with him. That'll raise his health up to 7 and his sanity up to 3. And that's going to complete all of our actions. We'll move on to the encounter phase, beginning with Michael McGlenn in London. And I think he'll do a location action in London. And that encounter reads, you spend a charming evening at the Kit Kat Club in Haymarket, making friends. Test influence. Okay, McGlenn has an influence of 3. All right, McGlenn will make his influence roll with 3 dice. He has 1 success. He's passed it. We'll continue reading. It says, if you pass, a wealthy patron takes interest in your struggles. Gain a funding condition. All right, that is great. All right, so he gains a funding condition. You may discard this card in place of gaining a debt condition or to discard a debt condition. During a reckoning, if you are on a city space, you may flip the card. Okay. So that completes his encounter phase. We'll move on to Lily Chen in Shanghai. Lily Chen is in Shanghai, and there's a clue token there, so I think she's going to do a research encounter. That research encounter reads, you wake to a squat, bloated spider hanging above your bed. If you have at least 1 spell, she communicates telepathically that she has broken free of Atlach-Nacha's brood. Gain this clue. If you have no spells, you immediately pack your things and leave the horrible hotel. Lose a sanity. All right, well, she does not have a spell, so we're going to lose a sanity, and that will end the encounter. She's down to 3 sanity again. Definitely tough coming by these clue tokens. That's going to end Lily Chen's turn. We'll move on to Wendy Adams in Bombay. Wendy has no choice. She'll have to take a general encounter, and this is in a city, and it reads, a mob blames famed occultist Eton Laurent de Mesuret for several strange deaths. You intervene to prevent his arrest. Test influence -1. Well, Wendy has an influence of 1, so she's only going to be rolling 1 die for the test. And here's the roll. She rolls a 3. That's a fail. Wendy does have a focus token, but I guess we'll try it. I'll have her use the focus token and we'll try a reroll. It's only a 1 in 3 chance, but here it is. She rolls a 2, she failed, so we'll read the fail condition. If you fail, you get blamed instead, gain a detained condition. Okay. And so she gets a detained condition. It's a restriction. You cannot move or perform actions other than the action on this card. Instead of resolving an encounter, flip the card. Anybody can take the local action, test influence, and if she can pass, or anybody else in her space can pass, we can discard the card. Okay. Well, we're really having a rough road here. Even the encounters aren't working out for us. It seems like all the encounters are hitting the abilities that we have, or lower level abilities, instead of the higher ones. So we'll have to hope that changes. Okay, we'll move on to Hank Sampson. He's also in London, England. All right, Hank is going to take a London encounter, and we'll see what happens there. All right, the London encounter reads, the Professor of Anglo-Saxon at Pembroke offers you a quest. Gain 1 task unique asset. In exchange, he shows you highly esoteric research he has done on the name Nodens. Test lore. Okay. He draws the task unique asset Purifying the World. When you defeat a non-epic monster during a combat encounter, place that monster on this card, then you may flip the card. Okay. And now we have to test lore, and unfortunately Hank Sampson is not a lorist on any means. He has a lore of 1. So once again, we have 1 die for the test. This is terrible. Here's the roll. He rolls a 4. Now, do we invest his focus token to try to re-roll it or not? I think we'll try it. I'll spend the focus token and we'll try to re-roll that. He's got a 3. We failed. Oh boy. Okay, it says if you fail, the research clouds your dreams, gain 1 madness condition. Oh boy. The madness condition is amnesia. When you perform a rest action, you may roll 1 die. On a 5 or 6, discard the card. During a reckoning phase, we have to test will. If you fail, flip the card. All right. And that's going to complete the encounter phase. We'll move on to the Mythos phase. All right, the Mythos card is Omen of Disaster. We're going to begin with an Omen track movement. So the Omen track will move on to the blue star pattern, and examining the board, we have an open gate in relay. So that is going to move the Doom track down 1. So the Doom track moves from 9 down to 8. All right. Next is the Reckoning effects, and we'll begin by checking in order, beginning with monsters and then the ancient one. Well, we have a couple of monsters with Reckoning effects. First one is a star spawn in relay, and it says during Reckoning, roll a die. On a 1 or 2, advance the Doom by 1. All right, we're going to have to try to take care of this thing, but unfortunately it has a toughness of 5. So that makes it really hard to draw that creature to Michael McGlenn using his summoning spell. So we might have to travel there to get rid of this thing. We'll make the roll and see what happens. Okay, here's the roll. Hopefully we don't get a 1 or 2. We rolled a 4, so no action there. That's good. The other monster with a Reckoning effect is this Avian Thrall in Rome. And that says to move the monster to the nearest investigator. Then he encounters the monster. All right, well, the nearest investigators would be in London. So we'll move that creature to London, and then I guess I'm going to have to check to see if we got two characters, which one confronts it. Can we pick, or is it the lead investigator, or what happens? I'm going to check the rules real quick. Well, I checked the rules, and it doesn't really state what happens other than a few basic principles. First of all, on the token, it says move the monster to the nearest investigator, meaning singular. So in this case, we're moving to the nearest investigator, which is one of those two. Under lead investigator, it says when investigators make a decision as a group, the lead investigator makes the final decision. So it looks like this creature is going to attack one of the heroes there, and we will be able to decide which one. I'm going to use Michael McGlenn. We'll have to begin with a will test, and he has a will of 3. Okay, here is the roll. He's got 1 success, so that's going to lower the horror level by 1. He's going to take 1 sanity damage. That'll move him down to 2 sanity. Now we'll go to the combat step. He has a combat value of 4. It's going to be reduced by 1 for the -1 token he has on that. That's 3. Then he's going to employ his Tommy gun, which gives him +4. So we're back up to 7 now. But the test is a -1. So we'll be rolling 6 dice for this test. And we'll see how we do. All right, 6 dice. Here's the roll. And he has a total of 4 hits, whether you believe that or not. That's what it is. 4 hits. That's going to wipe out any damage it has, and he's going to kill the creature. That is absolutely awesome. So we'll get rid of that avian thrall. All right. Finally, some good news for a change. Okay, we'll continue on with the reckoning. We finished monsters. We'll go on to the ancient one. The ancient one is going to spawn a gate unless the investigators as a group discard a total number of clues and spells equal to half the investigators. Well, technically we could do it. We have 2 spells for Michael McGlenn, but I don't want to do that, so we'll have to just spawn another gate. And the gate that'll be spawned is in Tunguska. So we'll place that in Tunguska, and we'll get a monster that'll come through the portal. And so that gate opens in Tunguska, and a ghoul priest steps through to guard it. Let's see what this thing looks like. It has a reckoning effect. Not too bad on its statistics. That's fairly easy to use, but it says if you lose health from the strength test, gain a paranoid condition, and then during a reckoning, resolve the reckoning effects of the cultist listed on the Ancient One sheet. All right. So, it's not the worst. All right. Next up would be any Mythos cards that are active. There are none, so we'll go on to the next portion of that, which is possessions and conditions. All right, we'll begin with the lead investigator, Michael McGlenn. He has 1 card that has to be resolved, and that's this funding card. It says, during a reckoning, if you are on a city space, you may flip this card, and he is. So we'll flip it and see what happens. It says, all in. With so much money burning a hole in your pocket, you cannot resist the opportunity to double your winnings. You may roll 1 die. On a 4, 5, or 6, gain any number of assets from the reserve with a total value of 3 or less, and then flip the card. On a 1, 2, or 3, discard the card. Well, it'd be nice to try it. 50-50 chance. We'd be able to pick up a lot of stuff there. I guess we'll try it. So we'll make the roll, and we're looking for a 4, 5, or 6. Here's the roll. We rolled a 3. On a 1, 2, or 3, discard the card. Ugh. All right, so that card is discarded. I took a chance and I lost. Let's see if we have any other ones. There is one, a detained condition for Wendy, and amnesia for Hank Sampson. Those would be the only cards left, so we'll move on to Wendy Adams. I'm wrong about that. Wendy does not have a card with a reckoning effect. Only Hank Sampson does with his amnesia, so we'll go there. All right, he's got this amnesia card. It says to test willpower, and if we fail, we have to flip the card. So we'll make a roll. His willpower is currently 3. And that's all he gets. So we'll be rolling 3 dice for this test. And we'll see what happens. Okay, here's the roll. He's got 2 successes, so we've done it. We don't have to flip the card at least. That's good. And that's going to end the reckoning phase. So we'll move on to the next portion of the card. All right, next portion of the card is another gate coming out. This is starting to get to be a pattern here. Let's see where the gate is, and it's going to be at the pyramids. Okay. So the gate opens in the pyramids and a crawling one comes through. Let's take a look at that thing's statistics. -1 to will test, a normal strength test, and it has an unusual amount of damage. Magical resistance, damage is equal to your strength. Oh boy, that is not good. There's one way we can get rid of these things, and that's Samson has that special ability as an action. He can test strength, and this would be before combat would occur. If he passes, he can discard a monster in a space with toughness equal to the number of successes. So in this case, if he could get 3 successes, we could get rid of this without having to go through its special conditions of the magical resistance and that. So that's a possibility. All right, now we'll read the event, and it's Omen of Disaster. The eclipse seems to be lasting for too long, as if the darkness is refusing to let go of its reign. After the eclipse concludes, astronomers disagree as to the reasons, but among your companions, the significance is clear. All right, it says randomize the gate stack and reveal the top gate in the gate stack. Advance the doom by 1 for each gate on the board that corresponds to the same omen as the top gate in the gate stack. If there are no gates on the game board correspond to the omen, spawn a gate. Okay, well, let's take care of that. All right, so we're going to randomize the gate stack, and then we're going to flip the top one and see what happens. So we'll randomize this. Okay, and then the gate is revealed, and that is a red one, Hyperborea. All right, so it says advance the doom by 1 for each gate on the game board that corresponds to the same omen at the top as the top gate in the stack. So in this case, it's a red one. We have 1 gate open in Rome, which is red, and that's going to advance the doom another space. Oh boy. So our doom track is going to slide down to 7. This is not good. And that's going to conclude the Mythos phase. Our last procedure is to decide if we want to move the first lead investigator token, rather. So I think we might do that. I'm going to think about this for a second and see the sequence of things. I do have Wendy Adams in Bombay, and I'd like to get her to the pyramids, but that's being guarded by a crawling one. So if I can get these other investigators to move before her, maybe we can take that thing out. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to move the lead investigator token to Hank Sampson, and he'll begin the next round for us. And I think I'm going to end the video here. We're going to continue on with episode 2 of our 4 investigator playthrough of Eldritch Horror versus Atlach-Nacha. Thank you so much for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. I hope you're enjoying this playthrough. Look forward to seeing you again on the channel for our next episode. In the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club wishing everyone a pleasant day. Good night.